Hello and welcome to this yet another edition of The Print Live on our YouTube channel. And I'm Snesh Alex Philip, and the question that I'm answering today is whether will the electronic evidence provided by the Indian Air Force on Pakistan's F-16s end the debate? Well, the answer to that question is sadly a no. Yes, the Air Force last evening for the first time went ahead on record and put out pictures of the AWACS, that is the early air warning systems aircraft that we have, and those pictures were put out by the Air Force showing for the fact that the F-16s were indeed used by the Pakistan Air Force during the attempted air raid on the 27th of February, and also for the fact that one F-16 was shot down by Wing Commander Abhinandan Vartaman just seconds before his MiG-21 Bison was shot down too. So please do send in your questions, and I'll try and answer as many questions as possible. We'll focus on this, the evidence that was put out by the Indian Air Force, and the fact that what would be the Pakistan stand now, how would Pakistan react to it. I have a question coming in from Rahul, and he's asking me, well, exactly what I asked. How will Pakistan react to it? Well, the Pakistani ISPR chief had yesterday gone on, just hours, minutes after the IAF press conference, had gone on to Twitter and again claimed that the F-6 that the Pakistan Air Force did not lose a single fighter aircraft. Now, what he ideally needs to explain is for the fact that what happened to the second pilot who was in Pakistani custody. Remember that on the 27th of February, when the about 12:30, when the after the air battle, the Pakistan ISPR chief had come on record and issued a statement in which he said that while one Indian pilot remains in their custody, another one has been admitted to the military hospital, and he had said and hoped that the treatment would be successful. So the big question that needs to be answered by none other than the Pakistani military is who was the second pilot who was admitted to the military hospital. India on the 27th itself had claimed and had admitted that one of their aircraft, that's a MiG-21 Bison, was shot down by the Pakistan Air Force, by the Pakistani military, and that Wing Commander Abhinandan is in their custody. So as I said, it's Pakistan which will now have to answer who the second pilot was. Because India has gone ahead and put out irrefutable proof as per the IAF, which shows that an F-16 of the Pakistan Air Force did indeed go down on the 27th of February. I have a question coming in from Prashant, who's asking, why is Pakistan denying the fact? Well, Pakistan as a country is a country which is based on denials. If you ask them whether they won the 1971 war, they would say yes, they did. If you ask them whether they won the 1965 war or the Kargil battle, they would continue to claim that yes, they have won. So they're always in a state of denial as far as India is concerned. Remember that even when it comes to terror organizations supporting terror, in spite of mounting evidence, Pakistan continues to be in denial. So this comes as no surprise that Pakistan has gone ahead and denied the fact that their F-16 was shot down by a vintage Russian MiG-21 Bison. It's a huge slap on the face of Pakistan, because remember that on the 27th there was a package of about 24 Pakistan Air Force aircraft, which included the Mirage 3 and 5, the F-16s, the JF-17s, who had attempted to carry out strikes on military installations. It was timely action by the Indian Air Force by two Su-30s, two Mirages, and 7 MiG-21 Bisons that forced the Pakistani aircraft to withdraw. But however, in the ensuing air battle, India did lose a MiG-21 Bison. But the fact of the matter is also that Pakistan also lost, and it's something that they would never ever admit. But sadly, as they say, no matter how much you hide the truth always remains. Another question that has been asked is also the evidence close to election season. Isn't it strange? Does it have any political linkage or pressure? Well, I would not really say whether the evidence is really linked to any political reasons or not, but the fact of the matter is that the airstrike happened on the 26th, that is a Balakot airstrike. There was a retaliation by Pakistan on the 27th. India lost MiG-21 Bison, Pakistan lost an F-16. There has been a renewed debate on the loss of F-16 after a very prominent American magazine came out with a report saying that as per the US count, there has been no loss of F-16. Well, this was followed up by a statement by the Pentagon, which actually went on to record and say that they are not aware of any such count. So remember that the Air Force has put out this evidence amid this renewed debate on whether Pakistan did indeed lose an F-16 or not. So while I would not connect it to the ongoing election, but the fact of the matter is that this did come, the press conference did come, when the whole campaign is currently on for the phase 1 of the Lok Sabha elections. Well, another question that I've coming in is, will Indian government finally establish a joint special operations command and a common chief of the defense of staff? Well, that is something that has been promised by the Congress as well as by the BJP as far as integration of the forces and appointment of a chief of defense staff is concerned. As far as whether a joint special operations command will be set up or not, well, the command has already been approved by the Narendra Modi government. This was approved during the during the combined commanders conference that was held in Rajasthan, and at that time a decision was made and the approval for setting up of a special forces command was indeed given by the Narendra Modi government. What I am told from sources within the military establishment is that the work is already on. Now this command will have special forces personnel drawn in from the army, that is the para SF, from the Garuds of the Indian Air Force and the Marcos of the Indian Navy. They'll be given further training and would be equipped and trained to carry out very specific cross-border operations. And yes, and that is something that is already been approved and the work is already on for that. Well, another question that has been asked is why the IAF didn't give this evidence before. Well, that's a very interesting question. Remember that the IAF had on the 28th of February itself come on record and said that they have indeed shot down an F-16 aircraft. Now, whether the forces should give out evidence or not is something that is completely debatable. Well, for that matter, I've spoken to senior officers in the Air Force and the government, and many of us, some of us were actually shown pictures of the aerial duel that took place. Even the pictures released yesterday were redacted pictures. I've seen a larger with more specific pictures that were put out there by the Air Force, and it clearly shows that the F-16s were indeed used by the Pakistan Air Force and that an F-16 completely went out of the radar moments after being engaged by Wing Commander Abhinandan. The Subhashish Chatterjee is asking, would PAF allow official audit of all the F-16s they have by the Pentagon? Well, this entirely depends on the agreement, the end user agreement that the US has with Pakistan. So it's not something that India can really go ahead and say that Pakistan needs to show all its F-16s. It is something, a decision that has to be taken by the US as well as by Pakistan. Remember that the Foreign Policy magazine had come out with a report quoting unnamed US defense officials as saying that there indeed was a count and no F-16s were lost. However, the Pentagon later issued a statement saying that they are not aware of any such count. So as I said earlier, this has to be completely a process that has to be driven and taken ownership of by the US itself. Well, another question that I've coming in is, who was the pilot and why don't we have his name? Well, how many pilots, who was the pilot? Remember that we have the Indian Air Force has the particular call sign of the Pakistan aircraft which did not land. Now, there are multiple names of the pilots that are doing the rounds of various social media. The Indian Air Force as well as the Indian agencies have a fair bit idea of who this particular pilot was, and obviously they have not come on record and named this pilot, but rather than asking the Indian Air Force to name the pilot of the Pakistan F-16 aircraft, it's actually the Pakistani establishment, that is the Pakistani military, which has to answer who the second pilot was. Major General Asif Ghafoor, who is the DG ISPR, had famously come on the camera and had said that one Indian pilot was in their custody and the second one has been admitted to the military hospital because he was injured. So it is for the Pakistani military to identify the pilot who was shot down by the Indian Air Force, and whether in case if he has died in the process, it is for Pakistan to go ahead and give him the dignity that he deserved, because at the end of the day, be it an Indian Air Force pilot or be it a Pakistan Air Force pilot, they're all soldiers at the end of the day who fight for their country, and every soldier's death, if at all, needs to be recognized, needs to be celebrated, and needs to be given the dignity that it deserves. I have a question which is coming in from Sumanta Kakati. When the Meteor missile is coming, what's up to the indigenous Astra 2.0 missile? Well, the Meteor missiles will come with the Rafale fighter aircraft. The first of the Rafale fighter aircraft is supposed to be handed over to the Indian Air Force in France in September this year. But the first batch of the Rafale fighters, which would be about 5 to 6 fighters, would be landing in India only next year. That is about March 2019. So these Meteors are an excellent air-to-air mechanism. It's a BVR, which is a beyond visual range missile, and this would come in with the Rafale. At the same time, there is also a possibility, a talk which is going on with the Air Force and the MBDA. MBDA is the European manufacturer of these Meteor missiles, to equip the Meteor with the Mirage 2000s that India currently operates. Now, these are upgraded Mirage 2000s. If for more details, do log on to www.theprint.in and read this particular story, which I had reported about 2 weeks back. Another question that is asked by Jasojit Mukherjee. Given the dogfight records, it was just our better trained pilots who got the better of PAF. Otherwise, do you think IAF's weakness was exposed with lack of BVR missiles, radar quality of planes? Well, you've asked me a very tough question, and sadly I would say that it was indeed the better training of our pilots and the awareness of our pilots that actually helped us prevent the aerial attack being carried out by the Pakistan Air Force. The fact of the matter is that the Su-30 with the R-77 missiles, air-to-air missiles, were completely outranged by the F-16s of the Pakistan Air Force, which was carrying the AMRAAMs. And remember that these AMRAAMs were fired at the Sukhoi with about 40 kilometers inside Pakistani territory. It was only the training of these pilots which actually helped them to avert a possible tragedy. Another big gap that really came to light was the fact that India had to depend on the MiG-21 Bison. Now, these are vintage aircraft. These are supposed to be replaced. Had Indian Air Force got all the planes at the right time, these would have been replaced by new generation of fighter aircraft. And remember that it was way back in 2001 when the Indian Air Force moved in the file for getting the MMRCA. Had that tendering process, even though it was delayed, had that tendering process ended way back in 2012-2013, India would have had at least 4 to 5 squadrons of the Rafale fighter jets on the 27th of February. And yes, the entire scenario would have changed completely, because remember that the Rafales come equipped with the Meteor missile, which has a range of over 120 kilometers. You have a D-Max. I'm not getting into the specifics of it, but yes, it has a high kill ratio as far as these Meteor missiles are concerned, and there is no match that either China or Pakistan has at this moment to match with the Meteor strike range? I have a question coming in with, when is the new 21 MiG-29, 21 MiG-29 is coming? Well, Sumanta, well, it's currently under negotiation between Russia and India. These are the, this is a stopgap arrangement that the Air Force has. Ideally, the Air Force would have wanted more of the MMRC, more Rafale fighter jets in its as part of the aircraft that it has. But yes, these MiG-20 the negotiations are currently on, and is hopeful that in a matter of a year or so, these negotiations would be completed and Russia would be able to supply India with the MiG-29s. Well, I have a question coming in from Ruchira, she's asking how many missiles F-16s can carry. Well, I'm not really sure how many missiles the Pakistani F-16s can carry, but it all depends on the mission that is there. It all depends on the kind of payload that we're having, what kind of missiles, whether we want to carry bombs or whether you want to carry an external fuel tank. There are multiple things that go into play when deciding, when deciding how many missiles or bombs that a particular fighter jet can carry. Well, thank you so much for logging in and sending in your questions. Do log in to the Print YouTube live tomorrow too, around the same time, where one of my colleagues would be answering questions on the bigger story of the day. At the same time, do log into www.theprint.in and read the excellent and widely researched stories